I raised my younger brother, like a son. Now he calls me pathetic for not being successful. There was a time when my younger brother looked at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. He used to cling to my hand as we walked down cracked sidewalks, his tiny fingers gripping mine as if I was the only thing tethering him to safety. He used to smile up at me with unshakable trust, his eyes bright with a belief that I could fix anything, solve any problem, protect him from anything life threw our way. I was not supposed to be his parent, but I became one before I ever had the chance to understand what childhood was supposed to feel like. Our mother was a ghost, there in body, absent in every other way that mattered. A woman who spent more time chasing men and drowning in bottles than she ever did looking after the children she had brought into the world. Our father? He was never in the picture, his name nothing more than an empty space on a birth certificate, a phantom we never had the luxury of knowing. So, it was me. Just me. I became the one who wiped his tears when nightmares jolted him awake. I was the one who scraped together money for school supplies, who worked late shifts to afford a second-hand laptop so he wouldn't feel behind in class. I took jobs I hated, jobs that broke my body, just to make sure he had food, clothes, a home that wasn't filled with the sound of slammed doors and broken bottles. I gave up everything, college, dreams, friendships. While kids my age were going to parties, I was cleaning motel rooms, working double shifts at a diner, walking home in the dead of night with aching feet and sore hands just to make sure he had a life better than mine. And he did. He thrived. He got the education I could never afford. He walked into rooms with confidence, knowing he belonged, while I stayed in the background, content just knowing that I had helped put him there. He became someone important, someone respected, someone admired, and I was proud, so proud, until the day he looked at me like I was nothing. The first time he called me pathetic, I thought I had misheard him. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind that should have been peaceful, should have been filled with the warmth of familiarity. We were sitting in the small apartment I had managed to keep all these years, the same one where I had raised him, the same four walls that had been our sanctuary from the chaos of the world. I had been telling him about my job, how the hours had been tough lately, how I was trying to save up for something better. He had been scrolling through his phone, barely looking at me. Then, without warning, he sighed, set his phone down, and muttered, "It's honestly pathetic." I blinked. "What?" He looked up, expression blank, voice flat. "You're still stuck in this cycle, working dead-end jobs, never moving up. It's sad." A slow, cold sensation crept through my chest. I laughed, but it was forced, shaky. "You're joking, right?" "I'm serious," he said, shrugging. "You're just wasting your life. You could have done something if you'd tried harder, but instead you're—" He gestured vaguely at me, at the room, at everything I had built to keep him afloat. "This." I stared at him, heart hammering in my chest, trying to process the words coming out of his mouth. "This?" I echoed. "You mean the life I built while raising you?" He scoffed. Actually scoffed, as if the idea was ridiculous. "Come on, you act like you had to do that. Plenty of people come from tough backgrounds and still make something of themselves. You could have gone to school. You could have—" I felt something snap inside me. "I was too busy keeping you alive." The words came out raw, sharp, louder than I had intended, and for a split second, just a fraction of a moment, something in his face flickered, something like guilt. But it disappeared just as quickly, replaced by a cold indifference I didn't recognize. "Look, I appreciate what you did," he said, voice carefully measured. "But let's be real. You didn't have to give up your whole life for me. That was your choice." I felt like I had been punched. Choice? Did he really think I had chosen this? Did he think I had wanted to break myself just to ensure he had a chance at something better? Did he think I had options when our mother was too drunk to function and there was no one else to step up? I opened my mouth, then closed it. My hands curled into fists, nails digging into my palms, my body trembling with something I couldn't even name. I had never expected him to praise me for what I had done. I had never wanted him to bow at my feet in gratitude. But I had never, not in my worst nightmares, expected him to mock me for it. The days that followed were a blur of anger and disbelief. I replayed his words in my head over and over, each time feeling them cut a little deeper. "You're pathetic. You could have done something if you'd tried harder. That was your choice. I had spent years sacrificing so he could have a future. And now that he stood on stable ground, he looked down at me from his self-made pedestal, disgusted by the very hands that had carried him there. I didn't reach out to him after that, but he reached out to me, only when it was convenient for him, when he needed help moving into his new condo, when he wanted advice on something trivial, when he needed someone to vent to. And each time, I swallowed my pride and answered, because that's what I had always done. Until the day came when he needed me, truly needed me. And this time, I was ready. It started small. Little cracks in his perfect life. A business deal that went south. A professional mistake that cost him more than he was willing to admit. A personal scandal that put his name in headlines for all the wrong reasons. Then, suddenly, the calls started coming more frequently. At first, he was still cocky, still convinced he could fix it. "It's just a minor setback," he had said, laughing it off. Then came the frustration. "I don't get it. I did everything right. Why is this happening to me?" And then, the desperation. "Can I borrow some money?" I stared at the message on my phone, my heart steady, my fingers hovering over the screen. It would have been so easy to say yes, to rush to his side, to remind him that no matter how cruel he had been, I would always be there for him. But then I remembered the way he had looked at me, the way he had mocked me, the way he had made me feel like I was worthless. And I smiled. I typed out my response slowly, deliberately. "That's your choice." And then, I blocked his number. I never heard from him again. I imagine eventually he figured it out, that the same bridge he had burned when he called me pathetic was the one he needed to cross when he lost everything. I had spent my whole life sacrificing for him, but that day, I chose myself. It was strange, the silence. For years, my phone had been an unspoken tether between us, a lifeline he barely acknowledged when things were good, but one he had always reached for when he needed something. And I, like the fool I had always been, had answered every time. Until now. Now the silence stretched between us like an open wound. I thought that maybe he would try harder, that he would at least attempt to break through the wall I had built between us. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and he never called again. And that told me everything I needed to know. He had only ever valued me when I was useful. Now that I had finally refused to be his safety net, I had become nothing to him. I had spent so many years convincing myself that love, real, unconditional love, meant sacrificing everything for someone else, that taking care of him no matter the cost was what family was. But if that was true, why had it only ever gone one way? Why had he never once stopped to ask if I was okay? Why had he never once looked at me the way I had looked at him, with love, with pride, with an unwavering need to protect? I had given him everything, and in return, he had given me absence. And yet, despite everything, I found myself wondering, would he come back? Would he finally see what he had done? Or was I, in the end, just another disposable piece of his past? It happened nearly a year after I had cut him off. By then, I had rebuilt my life in ways I never thought possible. Without him constantly weighing on my mind, I had started focusing on myself. I found a better job, moved into a place that wasn't weighed down by old memories, started seeing people who actually valued me, and I felt free. But then, on a cold winter evening, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. At first, I ignored it, but something, call it instinct, call it a bad feeling, made me check the voicemail that followed. And the second I heard his voice, I knew. He was desperate. "Hey, it's me." A deep inhale, a pause. I know it's been a while. I know you probably don't want to hear from me." Another pause, longer this time. "But I really need to talk to you. Please, just call me back." I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. For months he had been fine without me, living his life, carrying on as if I didn't exist. But now, something had changed, and I had to know why. I didn't call him back right away. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I looked him up, and what I found stunned me. The picture-perfect life he had built for himself, the one he had used to mock me, to look down on me, was gone. His once thriving business? Closed. His lavish lifestyle? Vanished. His social media, once filled with smug photos of his success? Now a wasteland of silence. And then I found the article. A scandal. Something about a failed investment, a lawsuit, debts that had spiraled out of control. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. So that was it. The man who once called me pathetic, the same person who mocked me for struggling, was now drowning in his own failures. And now, when everything had fallen apart, who did he call? Me. Not his rich friends. Not the people he had chosen over me. Me. I let the knowledge settle, let the weight of it press down on me. And then, finally, I called him back. He answered on the first ring. Hello? His voice was rushed, breathless, like he had been waiting. For a moment, I didn't speak. I let him sit in the silence, let him feel even a fraction of what it had felt like for me all those months ago. Then finally I said, So, you do remember I exist? A heavy sigh. Look, No. My voice was cold, controlled. You don't get to talk first. You don't get to act like you deserve to be heard after what you said to me. A pause. A slight hitch in his breathing. Then quietly, I know. I waited. He exhaled again, slower this time, like he was trying to gather himself. I messed up. I raised an eyebrow, even though he couldn't see me. You messed up? He let out a humorless laugh. That's an understatement. I didn't say anything. I let him talk, let him spill everything he had probably rehearsed before calling me. The business failures, the debts, the friends who had abandoned him the second he stopped being successful. And finally, he admitted the thing he had never once acknowledged before. I shouldn't have treated you the way I did. His voice was quiet, raw. I was a complete asshole. I know that now. Something inside me twisted, because part of me wanted to believe him. But another part knew better. He hesitated before finally saying, I need help. There it was, the real reason he had called. I let the words sit in the air between us. I could feel it, his expectation. He thought I would say yes, because that's what I had always done. But this time was different, because I was different. So I asked, would you have helped me? Silence, and that told me everything. I took a slow breath, closing my eyes. You called me pathetic, I said, my voice steady. You looked at me, the person who raised you, and treated me like I was nothing. And now that you're falling apart, you think I should just fix it for you? I was wrong, he said quickly. Yeah, you were, I cut him off. But that doesn't mean I owe you anything. He exhaled sharply. So that's it? You're just going to let me fail? I smiled to myself. Welcome to my world. A long, heavy silence. Then finally he said, I never thought you'd be this cruel. I almost laughed. Cruel? He had no idea what cruelty was. No, I said simply. I'm just finally treating you the way you treated me. And with that, I hung up. I didn't lose sleep over it. Not like I once would have. Felt free. Free from the weight of his expectations. Free from the pain of his rejection. Free from the burden of believing I had to prove my worth to someone who had never valued me. He had his chance. I didn't regret hanging up on him. Not for a second. I had chosen myself over him. I had looked at the man I raised. The man who had once been the little boy who clung to my hand. The boy I had carried on my back when he was too tired to walk. The boy I had fed when there was barely enough food for one. And I had told him no. And it felt good. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. Because no matter how much I wanted to convince myself that I had wiped my hands clean of him, that the years of sacrifice and struggle were nothing more than a lesson learned, I couldn't erase the past. He had been my world once, and now he was just a stranger drowning in the consequences of his own arrogance. The silence stretched between us for weeks after that call. He didn't try to reach out again, and I didn't expect him to, until the day I found him sitting outside my apartment. It was late, too late for visitors. The city was quiet, the air thick with the promise of an oncoming storm. I had just finished a long shift, my body aching, my mind weary from a day of work that, for once, didn't feel like an endless cycle of struggle. And then I saw him, slumped against the wall outside my building, his suit wrinkled, his once polished shoes scuffed and dirty. He looked up as I approached, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the confident, self-assured man who had once called me pathetic for the life I had built. In his place was someone who had been broken by his own mistakes. For a moment, I just stood there, staring. Then, finally, I sighed. "What are you doing here?" He exhaled shakily, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I didn't know where else to go. I crossed my arms, keeping my voice even. "That's not my problem." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Yeah, I figured you'd say that." He shifted, staring at the ground. "I lost everything." I didn't respond. "I tried," he continued. "Tried to fix things, tried to pull myself back up, but no one wanted to help. The people I thought were my friends, they disappeared the second I stopped being useful. The connections I built, gone. My job, my business, my home, all of it." He looked up at me then, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Regret, guilt, shame. "Now I get it," he murmured. "I finally get it." I swallowed, my throat tight. "Get what?" He let out a slow breath. "What it's like to be discarded." The words hit harder than I expected. For years, I had begged him to see me, to acknowledge what I had done for him, to understand the pain of being treated like I didn't matter. And now, he did. But was it too late? We stood in silence for a long time. Then, finally, he spoke. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, his voice quiet. "I don't expect you to help me either. I needed you to know that I was wrong." He looked down, his fingers tightening into fists. "I should have thanked you. I should have seen what you did for me. But I was too full of myself to realize how much I owed you." I exhaled slowly, watching him. I could see the sincerity in his face, the raw, unfiltered truth of a man who had finally been humbled by his own mistakes. And I had a choice to make. I could walk away, leave him to figure it out alone, just like he had left me to struggle for years. I could let him feel the cold, sharp sting of being forgotten, of being turned away when he needed help the most. Or I could be the person I had always been, the one who gave, even when it wasn't deserved. I closed my eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply. Then, slowly, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my keys, and tossed them to him. His eyes widened in surprise. "What?" "There's a couch inside," I said, cutting him off. "You can stay there for a few days. That's it." I narrowed my eyes. "After that, you figure it out on your own." For a second, he just stared at me, as if he couldn't quite believe what I was saying. Then he swallowed hard and nodded. "Okay." He didn't say thank you, but for once I didn't need him to. In the days that followed, I watched him. He didn't complain. He didn't ask for money. He didn't make excuses. He just existed. Quiet, ashamed, trying to rebuild himself from the ground up. I wasn't the one carrying the weight of his mistakes. I wasn't his savior anymore. I was just me. One evening, as I was sitting on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, he stepped outside and stood beside me. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, he said, "I'll be gone by next week." I nodded. "Good." A pause, then, softer. "Thank you." I closed my eyes, exhaled, and let it go.